Gina Lucrezi, welcome to the Free Trail Podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Good to see you.
Do I call you Commissioner Lucrezi at this point? Is that the appropriate way to address you?
Right. Well, Commissioner-elect at the moment, but
Commissioner elect.
come January 14th is when I'm sworn in officially. And then, but yeah. So Gina's always fine.
Okay. Well, Commissioner elect Lucrezi, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. I'm so excited to discuss what we're referencing here, your newfound political career. Of course, you're also the founder of Trail Sisters. And I think there's some really interesting overlaps between the things that you've devoted at least the last decade plus of your life to. And it'll be fun to share that a little bit with the audience. But before we get to it, we always start in the same place. My opening question to you, Commissioner elect, is what makes you you? Gina, what are your unique strengths and weaknesses? How do they show up in your life?
All right. Well, that's a great question. And I feel like I should know this having listened to these. Um, the things I would come up with is I'm a hard worker. When it's all said and done, at the end of the day, I believe that being a hard worker, no matter what you have, where you're from, if you know how to work hard, you'll succeed in anything. So that's something. But I'm also kind of quirky and unpolished, and I think that brings a lot of relatability to many people. And so I don't know; those are things about me that I don't know. I guess make me me. So
Yeah.
that's maybe a lame-o answer, but that's what I got.
No, I love it. And we'll reference this many times in our conversation here today, but Matt Trappy, our mutual friend, shout out to Matt. He made a great video about you in your run for political office where you say something about your background that I think would be fun to just use as a opening context setter here. And that you say you grew up in a blue collar area. Your dad was a teacher. Your mom was a nurse. You said,
Mhm.
you're kind of a simple, hardworking person. And it feels like that was probably instilled in you by your parents and the community you grew up in. Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, no, that's yeah, and yeah, completely. It's just in the context of the film and with that statement, to go in from, just doing what I've been doing with Trail Sisters into something that is a political, I guess, position. I've never had it as I don't know. I didn't have an upbringing where like, oh, you want to get into politics one day and do all these things. I'm a normal person is kind of how I like to think of it, and just wanted to help out in an area that is maybe a little different than some other people might find, but it's just what moved me. And I was like, hey, I don't come from anything unique, but I believe anybody can get what they want or go far with their achievements if they just work hard and have a strong passion. And so, yeah, I guess it's just to have that relatability. And I know everybody comes from different backgrounds, of course, but I didn't think mine was exceptional in some way, shape, or form. So hopefully
Yeah.
that can encourage other people that want to do things. So,
I love it, but also it feels to me like having an unremarkable, maybe that's the wrong way to say it. You call it like not unique, right? Like it's a very quintessentially American story, right? Growing up in a place with hardworking people who are
mhm.
doing everything that they can to build a future for themselves and their families in some way sets you up perfectly for the things that you've done in your life, and especially getting into politics, kind of understanding what the salt of the earth communities of the United States of America are going through have probably in some way created the conditions for the career path that you've been on.
Yeah, I mean that's totally fair, and especially before jumping to the push for commissioner. I've been a Buena Vista trustee now for a little over 3 years, and it's I've seen. I'm gonna jump backwards for a hot second. Like I've seen things that I believe we needed in the space of trail running, right? And hey, how do I help that? But then sitting on a board in a municipality and seeing, okay, well, there's a lot of needs. Obviously, locally, there's running is like super bougie thing compared to what you have with municipalities. So you affordable housing, and what do your road and bridge situations look like, taking care of that public works, where you get your water from. There's so many other things, but for me it was just kind of like, how can I give back, how can I help the communities that I love the most. But to get to that point, you got to work hard. You got to talk to so many people, find out what it is that they need, learn about their backgrounds and their vision for the future, and then do the best you can to advocate and be a good leader in that space. So I don't know, spending lots of time in that zone is, I think, helped me both ways. And getting to know the salt of the earth people, as you will, like really digging in and just living the same thing as they live. So
Great. All right, we'll come back to that. Before we get to Trail Sisters, which I want to talk about quite a bit here, you and I met probably 12, 15 years ago, something like that, when we were both living in the Roaring Fork Valley.
yeah,
You were working at Trail Runner magazine at the
yeah,
time. Again, Matt Trappy
yeah.
touches on this briefly in the video. This was prior to its acquisition by Outside, when it still had a print publication. And I don't know, I think it would be fun to just like have you speak a little bit about that period of your life for a bit, like especially as it pertains to potentially how it created the foundation for what you ultimately did with Trail Sisters.
Yeah, totally. I was gonna say, I remember, what is the turkey trot that was in Glenwood? That might have been the first time I met you. You came up and
Yes.
just crushed the turkey trot. But
No, wasn't it? It was like a cross
fast.
country race, right?
Oh yes, yeah, yep,
Yes.
yep. But it was, yeah. And I remember I was like, damn, this is the fastest like turkey trot cross country race thing that I've ever seen. But I think that's probably where I first met you, within the Roaring Fork. But yeah, I was working at
That was
Trail
probably
Runner
like 2011 or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe even earlier. Jeez.
Yeah, going back. But yeah, working for Trail Runner was great. The Roaring Fork Valley. I'm now a valley over in the Arkansas Valley, but that's a magical place, and I had so much fun living there. That's where I first learned to do ultras. I met Ashley Arnold, who was there at the time, and she's the one that really introduced me to running ultras. And before that, I was came from a short distance background, and that's where I learned more about mountain running and things like that. But while I was working at Trail Runner magazine, so I was the advertising manager, and it was great. I had a lot of fun. I was there for about 2 years. When the publication was great, but I noticed just throughout time, I just was hoping, can we get more stories that are written by women or from that perspective? And even working as the advertising manager with all these different brands, just constantly seeing, what they were providing, for us to put in the magazine and kind of their focal points. You'd go to the trade shows and you'd catch up with them on the latest and greatest, and everybody was doing the best they could. I think I don't know. They probably didn't realize, like, hey, somebody sees this as something that might be missing, right? I don't think anything was ever intentional, but for me, who was trying to run professionally, which is kind of silly because I never really made any money. So felt kind of dorky, especially back then. But then also in those other positions, like things like, oh, we're missing the boat on more perspective here and women's voice, and how could we encourage more? And from the business side of things, which kind of sounds, turn the page to the other side, or for businesses, that's what they hear is money. But like, you're missing a huge part of the market.
Yeah.
Like invest a little bit, you might get a larger return, but it's easier to stay with what works than to introduce yourself into a new market. But that always stressed me. I'm like, come on, people, there's so much more we could do. But that was the original kind of urge or place where it's like, we need to do something here.
Yeah, well, it's always funny how things work in hindsight, where your experience working at arguably the leading trail running publication at that time gave you the insight, the unique insight that like, hey, there's not as much material as I would like to see or read about my experience of this sport, which of course then you took the initiative to bring to life on your own, that being Trail Sisters. So we can talk about that now. I think it'd be best to just kind of start with the founding story. We've talked about the founding insight. So maybe as best you can, I'm sure the audience would love to hear in all details you can recollect the early phases of it, to, taking that original insight and then giving it the initiation energy to get it off the ground.
Yeah. So after all that had, built up, Trail Runner and then some other things I was doing, I remember I was living in Boulder at the time. I was sitting at my kitchen table, and that's, I think it was a Squarespace site that I used. I was like, all right, we're going to make this journal. I had reached out to seven good friends and asked if each one would be willing to, write an article or two. Then I posted one per week, and I asked them if they would share it on their social media just so we could get, some reach and see what happened. But the whole idea was just to create more, hopefully, opportunity and participation through inspiration, education, and empowerment through this journal that was, generally focused on trail running and hiking. But that was kind of the, all right, let's see what happens. And sure enough, after we, posted some articles and shared them through social, folks write in like, hey, can I write something? Can I share? I'm like, totally. And at the time, it was a passion project. I just wanted to do something that would help and, provide something to the community that was insightful. Then I realized, oh, there might be more to it, but I didn't start it with the idea of I'm going to turn it into a business or an organization one day. It was just, I wanted to help. I wanted to do something. And I think, like what you've done with Free Trail is, I think, a lot kind of alike. You see the need for having more stories and more interaction and just more media within the space. And you grabbed it and went forward and doing great things. And so connecting with the community and providing, I don't know, opening the spaces where those voids are, I think, I don't know, it's just helpful and we need more of it. So that's kind of how it started. And then it somersaulted into so much more to where we are today. So we have the local groups and we do some races and we have retreats, and never thought it would go to that spot, but I'm so happy it did. But
yeah, it's funny, it's always, kind of unpredictable when you're starting something new. You always have this vision of what it might be in the future, and it ultimately will almost under any circumstance be completely different from that vision that you have in your head.
yeah.
But I think maybe the insight here is, as you just recalled, you asked 7 of your friends to create blog posts that became the first foundation of content that you published, and immediately people raised their hand to contribute. And it feels to me like that is the initial indication that there's space and demand within the market for what you were providing. Did it feel that way to you? Like, did it feel like there was an immediate feeling of raising your hand and wanting to contribute?
Yeah, it didn't take too long to have people jump in and, to see their interest, which, is heartwarming and exciting. She's like, oh, all right. It's people are paying attention. There's more to it. Now what, we've cracked open this door. Let's keep pushing it further, wider open. And that was like, all right, what do I do next? I guess for me to spend more time with this, I have to figure out other things to do with it as well. And so, but yeah, it's really, I don't know. I don't know if say encouraging, can't think of the right word, but heartwarming, I guess, just to see how many people did care. And I knew people cared, but then I didn't realize how many people did, if you will.
Yeah.
You assume it'd be a lot, but then when it actually comes to fruition and they're knocking at your door, you're like, oh wow, there really is a lot of people that feel the same way. So it was pretty cool.
You mentioned Ashley Arnold. I saw her for the first time in ages. I think it was at Canyons 100K
Yeah.
this year. I might be wrong. I'm almost certain it was in Auburn. I can't remember if it was Canyons or Western States. But I hadn't seen her in forever. And it seems like, based on Matt Trappy's video, that you two coined the term Trail Sisters. And I think we can't understate how important that probably is to what Trail Sisters has become. Like, it's a very clear description of what your community is, but it's also like a great memorable brand, and you've created like a nice logo and identity around it too. So maybe say a few words about Ashley, how you guys coined the term, and what difference just having that being your title and your brand has meant for your ability to build the community you have.
Sure. Yeah. So when I moved to Carbondale to work for Trail Runner magazine, I was moving from Massachusetts, and I was trying to, I'm like, where am I going to live? And the Valley is so hard to find any place to live. I mean, now and back then, so that hasn't changed there. And she was the associate editor for Trail Runner magazine. She was already there, obviously. And I had gotten to know her through interview processing and just from racing. I think she was up at Cranmore for a mountain race. And that's when I first met her. And it's like, I think I'm going to move out there. And she's like, well, let me know. We can be, housemates. I was like, okay. And so I contacted her, and she's like, all right. So we were housemates. We worked together at the magazine, but then we were also training partners. So that's where the idea of, well, Trail Sisters came, because we were best of buds, but then there were also times when we, butt heads, because like any sibling, you're around them, you love them to death, but you also fight like hell at times.
Yep.
So it's the trails that brought us together, but best of buds, felt like a sister to me, and vice versa. And I don't see her as often anymore. She's actually in Missoula now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, since we split from Colorado, well, she moved to Asheville and now is up in Missoula, but we still keep in touch. And, it's fun to see, what each of us are doing in our lives and where we're at now. But that's how that all started. Yep.
Leadville champion, Ashley Arnold.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So fun to see that part of the story in the video. So coming back to Trail Sisters, the organization, just talking about the growth of it over time. It was founded in 2016, I believe, so 8 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously growth can be challenging, and especially when you're managing groups, because there are communities that are scattered around the United States, which I think is another just great indication of your vision really resonating with a massive audience. But I'm sure the audience would love to hear just like how you manage that growth. Like once you understand, like, hey, we could be serving more people here, doing so in a way that was manageable, sustainable, and true to the values of the original vision.
So yeah, after we did the journal, people would, hey, this is great. I have like this online community I can kind of speak with through comments, or, but how do I actually find a trail sister that lives near me to go for a run with? I'm like, all right, how do I solve this? 'Cause it's going to get really tricky. And so I was like, well, Facebook's free and easy, so why don't we create groups? And we came up with kind of a list of guidelines or rules, if you will, like, hey, we have to do no drop, what makes it Trail Sisters, specifically. And it wasn't all that different than some other groups, but it was, women only, no drop. It was more about the social component than it was about training for a race, or, our competitive edge, if you will. And so, I would post that, and just, if folks wanted to start a local Trail Sisters group in their area, write in. And I just kind of single-handedly went back and forth with them until it was a good fit. And they would just utilize Facebook, and I asked them to do certain things. We were all admins on the page. And so we started in that regard. And then after a while, I think we have about 150 groups now, but it's always ebb and flow. Some are really active and then things change, everybody, different things going on in life, but it's all volunteer based. I mean, I can't pay folks to, and they have a lot of freedom to do kind of some of the things they'd like to do. We only ask that they, follow a fairly short set of rules to, ensure that they're compliant to what Trail Sisters is. But we created our own platform. It's definitely not as sexy as Facebook, but we don't have billions of dollars to, manage that. But we wanted to be able to have our own platform where we could do more integration with connections between each other, and know that the audience was there for that purpose versus, Facebook. You have all kinds of things going on at all times. So that's kind of where that morphed to eventually. But it was really neat. Every once in a while we'll get a request and I'm like, wow, they want a group here, or just somewhere unique. And it's neat to know that the message has reached, I guess, those areas, if you will.
Yeah. So, I think the San Francisco chapter does a weekly run that is well attended.
Yes. Yeah, they're great. I mean, some of the groups are like, my mind's blown, like above and beyond. But yeah, the Marin group, East Bay, they do an awesome job out there. So I appreciate everything they do. And, it's all about, they follow some of the things that are, I'd say, at the higher, whatever, Trail Sister organizational side. But, they're the ones that have really developed it into something unique, specific to their community, because every community is going to be a little different in culture and what's important to them in that area. And they've done amazing things. It's fun to follow from afar. And most of the times, like, oh gosh, I wish I had, the ability to teleport myself there and join them, because it always looks like they have a blast. So,
yeah.
But, yeah.
It reminds me of something you said in the film, something about how it is what it is now because of the people who got involved. In other words, you had the original vision, you had the original initiation to get it off the ground, but it was the community that created the momentum behind it. Maybe share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, totally. I use this it's probably a lame analogy, but like you mentioned, it talked about being the tip of the spear, had this idea, made somewhat of a actionable jump to do something versus just talking about it. But for it to really grow and expand, it took everybody's effort and input, really. And so I like to say, you think of it as a big wheel with all these little cogs on it, but all the cogs are the same size. And the only way to make this thing go forward is if everybody's doing what they're doing. You can't have something that's out of shape or out of place. It would stop, it would get stuck. But the only way for it to go around is if we just continue to work together. And so that's in my brain how I visualize what it is, but we're all needed. We all play an important role to keep the progress moving forward, or just to keep it going in general. And so, I can't thank the community enough, because again, it wouldn't be what it is without everybody. And I mean, that's talking about the whole community and not just Trail Sisters specifically. There's a lot of people outside of our, direct community that have been huge supporters. I mean, even like today, like, just thank you for the time for having me on your show, on your podcast, to share a little bit. That adds to it too, so more people can learn about it and get involved if they choose. So,
Yeah. The Marin chapter of Trail Sisters meets at SFRC, San Francisco Running Company. And I recall hearing at SFRC a male who occasionally or is peripherally attached to the Trail Sisters chapter here, call himself a trail mister. So, so I'm a trail mister in spirit here.
Yep. There we go.
So tell me about Trail Sisters Approved. So for the audience, for those who aren't familiar, just explain what that is. What are the standards and how did that come about?
Sure. A couple years ago now, was it 2018 or 19? I forget the year we started, but just working with a few different folks in the community, that were runners and also race directors, and trying to come up with a way that could make a race event just feel a bit more welcoming for everybody, but specifically women, as that was what we were pushing for. But we figured if they felt more comfortable, hopefully everybody would feel more comfortable. And so we came up with 5 different standards. And when thinking about these, there was a large focus, like, okay, we don't want to strap the race director with a lot more, tons of costs, or, I mean, it's already a lot to put on a race. So we don't want to hinder them and with everything else they're already doing. But what would be some easy steps that they could take that, could hopefully, create a better space, and also, I mean, grow that women's participation for their race. So, hey, we get more women, and if they do have open spots and women fill them, that's good for them too, right? So it's a lot of win-wins across the board. But the 5 things we landed on, so equal prize money, equal podium. There's 3 men, there's 3 women type, so keep it the same. Not all races do that, which still kind of boggles my mind a little bit. They have reasons for it, but I'm like, oh, come on. Yeah. Menstrual products on aid station tables. Some races, again, have that stuff, but it's hidden away in a first aid box. Then you have to ask or go searching for it. It's like, just put it on the table next to all the Vaseline and everything else that's awkward. If you want, if you feel weird about it, just throw it up there. But it doesn't have to be a weird thing. It's only weird if you make it weird. So that was a big focus. Then also when it came to apparel, if you provide a race day shirt, like, hey, it's fine if you want to have a unisex shirt, but you should also have a women's specific shirt. It can't just be unisex or just men's. There should be a women's. I don't know if you remember.
That's my wife's biggest pet peeve.
Is it?
Yes. It's like, I want a women's cut, for God's sakes.
Right. How about you both have probably seen this, all those companies that exist, they're like, we're going to make a quilt out of your race shirts. I'm like, yes, this is, they exist because we're like, we don't know what to do with these shirts. They don't fit us.
Right. Yeah.
So there's that. And then eventually we started doing a pregnancy or postpartum ask, so that, hey, if something comes up, and we leave it up to the race directors on the time frame, but we ask that they have some kind of deferral policy for women in that, going through that in their lives. And the last thing was really just to have a call to action to bring more women to the front of the race. Whether that's hey, split your start line into, one side's men, one side's women, or if you just make, 4 or 5 announcements throughout the start of the race to encourage them to come up, that'd be great. So even if you sometimes try to pull people up to the start, sometimes they won't do it. But my big thing for that was just make the effort to make sure they know they should be up there too. Only, 2 winners for the most part, unless there's additional categories, and that's fine too. But, you don't need to have a zillion of the same person on that start line. Only one person's going to get that trophy at the end. So why not have it be a mixed starting line so everybody has a chance to enjoy that moment, and all changes within the next 15 seconds anyway. But
has there ever been a moment, sorry, finish your thoughts.
Oh no, I was going to say that was really the focus, was just to have that moment in the beginning, and so other people could see it in any photos. And anyhow,
has there ever been a moment where you pinch yourself in recognizing what an impact your organization has had, where an individual has given you a testimonial, or you've gotten an email, or interface with a race director as it regards to the Trail Sisters approved standards, where you're like, I actually am making a difference here, at the risk of making you brag about yourself?
Well, there are times where I'm like, wow, can't believe went from this to this, for sure. But this will sound silly probably, but sometimes I get a little bit of I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but because it's the community. Like, again, I had an idea, I don't race or run nearly as much as I used to. So sometimes I feel strange about being part of this movement and not getting out the way I used to, and I feel like, oh, do I need to do more to count, to be a part of my own community, which probably sounds kind of nutty, but, but yeah, there's times like, and Justin, so my husband will sit there and be like, you're doing so much. It's great. And I'm like, I guess, but it's all of us. So I always go back to the collective, but that we're all doing it together. But every once in a while, I'm like, yeah, I guess I had an idea and I pushed it forward. And then it's nice to see so many other organizations. There's more and more that pop up, and more opportunities coming from other groups that I like to think that, well, maybe they saw something that we did and it motivated them to start something to help, a specific community that they were passionate about, or, so I like to think that. I don't know if that's could just be in my head, but it's fun to think that you're making an impact, though.
I think that says a lot about your character, Gina. And I do think we can't understate what an impact the Trail Sisters has had. I don't know if you have data to support my instinct that it's had a material impact on encouraging more women to interface with the sport of trail running. Have you been able to gather any of that data to measure your impact?
It's the hardest, it's interesting because, I know we have a ton of members just through our community site. We have about 30,000 people on just our community site, but then we have a ton of people that come to our website, and you start to think about, well, I'm sure some of those people are the same, but not everybody is part of a local group. So, it's hard to figure out how many, Trail Sisters there might be in general, just because it's hard to measure, because we have so many, I don't want to say buckets of people in different places. We have our membership, like our team membership, and I'm sure that coincides with being a community member, but maybe some of them aren't. So you're always kind of guessing, but I'd say at the end of the day, I think there's, I would definitely say we're impacting well over, 6 figures worth of people. You know what I mean? Like lots of, enough hundreds of thousands, I'd say. I mean, the space is small in that sense, but I think between running and trail running, I don't know, there's a lot that we try to measure, and we always come up to around that area, but nothing concrete for sure.
That's very, very cool. You should be really proud. So maybe before we move to your political career, are there any big vision goals for the future of Trail Sisters, or calls to action for the audience and how they can get involved?
Well, I always come visit the site, read anything. There's a lot of open access for all kinds of stuff, but just come and enjoy. And if you're if you want to be part of a local group, come visit the communities. But all they need to know or Google is Trail Sisters and they'll find us. But anything they learn or anything they see that they think is unique, I hope they share it with their friends and just encourage other people to get outside, no matter who it is. So that's really, at the end of the day, what is the most important thing to me. But yeah, envision on the future. I don't know. I'm like day by day. I personally just hope to get back out and do more racing. We'll see. I might try for the Leadville 100 myself again this year, but we'll see
Yeah.
what shakes. But
You and me both. I wish I was a little bit more active in my running and racing career too, but
you know how it feels. You get
can't
it.
do everything. You got Trail Sisters, Commissioner Elect, and
Yeah.
many other things. But yeah, one of the things you say in the film is that Trail Sisters just made you realize that you could make a difference in the world, which I think
Mhm.
is on its own a pretty valuable and powerful knowledge to have as a human being. I know you're also involved with search and rescue, and it feels to me like there's a through line in your life of service. You just in talking about Trail Sisters, sort of defer and give all the credit to the community.
Mm.
Search and rescue is not a profession you go into to get rich. It's a way you go and give back to people who are in desperate need.
Yeah.
And as we look ahead to your political career too, that's public service, right? Just talk about the spirit of public service for you. Where did that come from?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but it just did. Like it's like hindsight's 2020. As I've gotten older, I've realized that what's most important to me is giving back and getting involved with the communities that I love the most. And encouraging when I got involved with search and rescue, I guess for me, some of us, I'm encouraging all these women to go out on the trails and enjoy and have a blast. And I'm like, well, shoot, when they get hurt, maybe I should join an organization that can help them get back out if they get injured. Or that was kind of the comical way of thinking, I guess, for me. It's like, hey, how do I get involved and help on the other side of it? But I love to be in the mountains and just exploring. And I have the ability to move fairly quick. I'm not as fast as I used to be, but in terms of search and rescue world, I'm still probably quicker than almost everybody on my team. And so there's these things, different squads or teams or however you want to put it. And we have something's called a hasty team. And so that's usually what I'll do. And so if we get a call and, let's say the subjects broke their leg, they're at the top of the mountain, my job along with one or a few other folks will be to get up the mountain as fast as we can to check out the situation, radio back, really, are we going to need a litter, or is this going to be a helicopter trip, or or what else do we need that we can have the secondary team bring up. But something I can contribute is my ability to move quickly through the mountains to get to those subjects and kind of assess and then provide information that will hopefully make everything a bit better. But it's neat. It's a totally different type family. I mean, my entire life I've been with the running community. I have a good idea how our brains work in that space, but search and rescue is a volunteer organization with folks from all over the map, and everybody has different backgrounds and different stories, and so it's kind of a whole different type of family. But I don't know, it's been really neat just to have another different family that's not running specific and just learning from them and just sharing experiences. But search and rescue is a lot of fun. I encourage anybody, if they are able to, in their local area, if you can, there's all kinds of different roles you can do in search and rescue. You don't have to just be in the mountains helping people. You can be comms and radio and all kinds of other things. But anyway.
But what about this principle of being of service? Because it feels like it's a good way to cultivate a sense of purpose, maybe?
I guess so. I don't know why or where it really comes from, but I just know I enjoy it. I was telling a friend just the other day, we don't know how long I guess we're on this planet for. And as far as we know, this is our one life to live. And I enjoy going out and helping people and trying to create a space or opportunity or whatever I can so that we enjoy what we have while we're here. And for some reason, that's my thing. I haven't found anything else that I'm like as psyched about, which sounds super corny, but I don't know. I guess it's fun to give back and help out. It makes me feel good. It makes other people feel good. And at the end of the day, I think it's a good thing. So
I've been thinking a lot about this idea of finding your life's work. And if service is your life's work, right? It's inherent by definition. It means something you do for your life, for your whole life, right? And it seems like there's multiple different ways in which it's shown up in yours, including public service, politics, which we should talk
Mhm.
about now. I think first
Sure.
it's important to set the context of place. So can you just describe Chaffee County, where it is, and what makes it the right home base for you?
Oh yeah. Oh, I love it out here. Okay, so for anybody, well, okay, so Colorado, of course, if you didn't know, but so if you think of where a lot of people have heard of Leadville, it's about what 35 miles south of Leadville is where Chaffee County is situated. Um, we have the collegiate peaks are here. So we've got, all those fun big mountains. If you've heard of Nolan's, that's our backyard. That's where we do a lot of search and rescue calls. We have the Arkansas River Valley. So we have one of the most rafted rivers in the country. But I live in Buena Vista, and we also have Salida as the other large town. And we have Poncha Springs and a few other little municipalities within, but about 20,000 people live in the county full time. So as a brief, that's, a little bit about Chaffee, but it is a magical place. It's only about 2.5 hours from the Front Range. So we have a lot of traffic in the summertime, a lot of tourism, which is great. We need it. But yeah, sorry, I forget what the other half of the question
No,
was,
no.
besides just explain what
Well,
Chaffee County is.
well, maybe what makes it a special place to live, and maybe just to again educate our audience a little bit more. It's just down the road from Leadville, which will
Yeah,
be much more familiar to a trail running
right.
audience. And it seems to me like there's a great running community that's sprouting up there. It is a trail running heaven. So,
Mhm.
yeah, if there's anything you want to add just about what makes living there special, because I think that's important foundation setting to, why you want to be of service to this particular community.
I mean, why I love it out here so much is, I'm lucky enough to be able to live in a place where, my work is remote, and now working as a county commissioner, obviously it's based here, right? But, we don't have a lot of large industry things going on out here. So there's a lot of entrepreneurial things that you have to kind of bring with, or you work for a school or a few of the little factories out here, or ranching or farming. But it's a magical playground in terms of recreation. Like I said, we have the 14ers are all based out here. So there's endless trails and peaks to go bag if you like. You have Monarch. So if you're a skier, you do have a ski mountain that's out this way. And then in Leadville, you have Cooper, which is out there, another great ski mountain. Down the road, you have Copper Mountain. So you have skiing as well. But with the rafting, that's another big draw. If you like the water, it's, or fly fishing. We've got Gold Medal River. So for me, I lived on the Front Range. It was a great place. And man, there's a lot of things you can get at any time, which I really miss because we don't have that here. But I just wanted the peace and quiet of, small valley, charming little towns, I guess, if you will. But the neighborly appeal is really kind of what brought me. And is the folks here, they're not pretentious. They're normal people. They just, I've lived some other places where it's felt a little, I don't want to start calling out other places. I'll piss everybody off, but it's down to earth.
Orange County,
folks.
California. Yeah.
Well, no, I've never
A little
lived there,
pretentious.
so
A little pretentious.
I can't comment on. I haven't lived there, but it's just a down to earth place. I feel like, and the people here are sweet. For the most part, everybody gets along. You help your neighbor. It just kind of has that mellow feel, but everybody really appreciates the outdoors here and the heritage of what the valley used to be in terms of the mining history and the farming. So I think there's a good understanding between, hey, what growth looks like, but also respecting the history of what Chaffee County is, and how it was, how it's grown and where it came from. But it is turning into a bit more of a little running haven. We've got Sage and Sandy and Anna Mae and Devin down in Salida area. Then, though it's not the same county, up in Lake County, so Leadville, you have Courtney and Annie. Why can't I think of Annie's
Annie
last name?
Hughes,
Annie
Mike
Hughes.
Ambrose. Yeah.
Yep.
The,
So there's
the
more and more.
Terranovas spend a lot of time there too.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yep.
It's a beautiful place. It's an amazing place. So you mentioned you started as a trustee, and in the film, you say something about how in local politics, there's sort of an understanding that it gets in your blood.
Yes.
And I wanted you to describe that a little bit for our audience here about like what makes local politics special. Why does it get in your blood?
So, well, my background, my undergrad was TV film. So, and going back to like when I was talking about my mom and dad, like I didn't go to school for political science or anything, so municipal government was all brand new to me. I didn't know anything. All I knew is how do I get involved? How can I help my community? And when you have a seat at the table on any board, commission, um, committee, that's where the policy making happens. I understand already. I know I'm a pretty darn good listener and I can take that and turn it into something. And that's what Trail Sisters is. That was like the impetus of it was listening, seeing what people needed, and then creating something to help provide a solution or advocate for that support. And so I took that same thing and that's what I wanted to do as a trustee. What did we need locally? What was I noticing? How could I help folks? And I had the energy and I was willing to work hard. And the other thing was, especially at the time, coming from I'm 41 now, but I guess it was only I've been in the seat for about a little over 3 years. And also as a woman, it's a little different. A lot of political spaces are generally a bit older and more male dominated. And I was like, well, I could bring a different perspective, and there's room for a diverse group of perspectives. We need all of them. But I just thought, well, why, there's a lot of younger people moving here too, especially in my age range, which I know I'm not young, but I'm also not retired. And
Yeah.
that's a whole different perspective when running a town, what the needs are. So, I, like any small mountain town, especially, there's a big push for affordable housing, making sure that things that are being built, hit income ranges that actually fit for a small mountain town. Whereas what people might make here to be able to afford, just a single family home, sure, they might be able to afford something quite large in another region, another state, but out here you can barely scratch the surface of what it costs. And short-term rentals are popping up instead of long-term rentals. So anybody that had housing, got the boot because people could make more with the short-term housing rental. So there's all kinds of issues that exist. And you're like, well, I love this community. How can I help them? How can I help to create that sustainable future for future generations? And that's kind of where it all started. And I guess the getting in your blood, once you start to learn how different departments work and how everything comes together to run a municipality, I don't know, it's just a whole new set. For me, it was a whole new set of information and knowledge. And I just kind of was like, oh, how can I help this? How do we do this? And it was puzzle pieces. And I was just putting them together to make the full picture. But it was just, I see it as a lot of fun. Some people might not use that word, but
it seems like it would be fun as a puzzle of like, I live here. How can I make this place a better place to live for myself and for my community so that I end up enjoying where I live even more than I do now? I don't know. It does seem fun. I'm just sort of thinking now too, as you're talking about this, you hear the phrase all politics is local, and that local politics is like, maybe in some ways the most important kind. Does that resonate with you at all? Does that bring anything up that would be fun to talk about?
So I would say this, local politics or what's happening locally, in my opinion, my opinion, I think is way more impactful than higher level politics.
Yeah.
I said because at the end of the day, a lot of things that are put in place by your local jurisdictions is going to affect you day to day. But a lot of things at a national level, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they don't affect you, but not everything affects you on the daily, not things that you might see every day. They're not making up your, the standards by which you live by, in terms of building codes and things like that. Like there's a lot of things that, you don't ever interact on the national level with, but local stuff I think is really important. And it's funny because I don't think a lot of people give a lot of thought to that. In some areas, maybe, but through the election here, everything was high level, like what's going on nationally. I'm like, I get it. It should be important, but don't forget about your, grassroots down here. I mean, the people that are in these spots will be making many more policies affecting daily life. And so some people get it, some people don't. And then some are completely like, hey, politics aren't for me. I'm like, well, that's fine. Just don't complain if you don't like what shakes out.
Yeah.
But
so in the transition between trustee and commissioner, you have to kind of develop a platform. So
Mhm.
I'm sure people would love to just hear the X's and O's of what that means. Like, how do you set the vision to inspire your constituents to vote for you? Like, how do you build your platform, and maybe what did you stand for in your election?
Yeah, yeah. So, from moving from the town of BV to county commissioner. So, county commissioner is a bit larger than just the town of BV, especially. But in some places, your town council or your board of trustees is quite large. But out here, BV is what, 2,800 people. So, it's pretty small. But for the county, we're talking 20,000 people. And, my one liner, if you will, was that sustainable future for generations to come. A big thing for me, because background in sport and the outdoors, was making sure that we preserve and protect our outdoors. That's their land, the water, wildlife, open spaces, and the heritage of what Chaffee County is. So that was a big thing for me, is making sure that we're respectful and responsible with that. And then so there's three things, usually you do it in threes, but the housing, affordable housing, making sure that is, there's a lot of people that want to live in the West and it's streamy. They watch Yellowstone, I don't know, and they're like, yeah, let's go West, or whatever, which is great. Happy to have you. But from my point of view, what I need to do is I have to make sure that as people come in, that what we are producing in terms of housing is responsible growth. That do we have the resources to support all the people that want to live out here, right? Water in the West is a huge situation. It's a huge deal. And if you encourage more people to come, which you don't shut the door behind you, but are there conservation measures in place? Are you building homes in areas where there's recharge in the aquifer underneath, that zone? Or is there nothing and you're just drilling deeper and deeper for more well water that eventually doesn't recharge? Like,
Mm.
there's all kinds of, so you got to be really thoughtful with your growth. And the last thing was just economic development. Being out here, we thrive. Our major income really comes from sales tax, and that's all from tourism for the most
Yeah.
part. And that's
Hmm.
mainly summertime. And for our community to continue to do well and to progress, we need to figure out, like, okay, what diversified businesses or structure can we have throughout the entire year? But then you also have to balance, we get so flooded in the summer with tourism, which we need, but it takes away from everybody who's like, I like my small little community. I can't go anywhere anymore in the summer because it's so busy. So you have to try to, like, all right, is there any way to balance it? You can't stop people from coming, but how do you make sure that you kind of capture those unique moments so that people that, aren't thrilled about that and have lived here their entire life still feel like, hey, this is my space. I can get to what I need without having to deal with the rigmarole of, the crazy tourism. But economic development is really important out here so that we can continue to do more. Everything costs money. Everything costs money. So you
Unfortunately,
need, so you need strong income coming into your community. But those are the
it
three
feels like
things.
a comprehensive platform. I like the way you describe the three legs of the stool because, yeah, economic development is what will create opportunities for the community, for your constituents.
Mhm.
And ultimately, that will fund through tax revenue
Mhm.
your ability to continue making positive impact on the community. But how do you do it in a sustainable way
Mhm.
where, while also providing affordable housing to people who need it, and I do think that that particular area of Colorado has a huge potential to grow in population. There is a lot of open space. I don't know what all the land use regulations are, how much development could happen there, but especially with the way the Front Range is growing, I'm sure there are a lot of people moving there now, and you
Mhm.
probably do feel that pressure already. And so it does take leadership to figure out
Mhm.
how to map a productive future forward. I appreciate you sharing that. So speaking of the X's and O's, I'm sure people would also be interested to hear about the realities of a campaign, from I don't know anything about running for office, so you can start with the very basics, but like things like fundraising and advertising and
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
actually communicating this platform you just articulated to the people who you want to inspire to vote for you. Like, just tell us a little bit about the process of running for office, the process of running a campaign.
Sure. Yeah, it's, I like to encourage everybody to go for it, but I'm like, I get it if it's not everybody's cup of tea, because it is not a small job. I mean, I was told if you can't run a good campaign, you're not going to be a good commissioner. And I was like, I totally get it. Because if you don't put the time and energy into this, forget about it. You shouldn't have the job. I'll say that. But yeah, it is a ton. And it was, I want to say I don't want to say it was trickier for me than for some others. I mean, if you go into a political role and you're retired, I get it. You might have other things going on in your life, but when you're still running a full-time business and doing other things, and you're trying to campaign full-time, and it is a kind of almost like a full-time thing to campaign, especially for higher level roles. But I mean, you have your website, you're updating that all the time, different things that might not sound like the end of the world, but you want to make sure what you're saying makes sense, and you fine tooth comb, go through everything, make sure it's good. But
Takes time for
yes,
sure.
it takes
Yeah.
time finding the right photography, all of that, but then you're outside of just digital stuff. The amount of doors you knock on and just visits with people to sit and listen and find out what their needs are, what they'd like to see. So lots and lots of door knocking. And that's always a little risky. There are programs where you could find which stores might be more friendly depending on, if you're running with a party or whatnot. But, it's that information isn't always right. So you, you get nervous sometimes going to doors because I guess it'd be like, you're soliciting essentially. You just walk up cold call style. Then you're sending out newsletters. You're doing lots of different speaking events. You set things up for like open house, if you will. We do these things called house parties where folks are generally willing, that's a supporter of yours, say, hey, I'll have some drinks and some snacks, and I'll invite my neighbors over or friends, or and then the candidate goes and you speak about what your platform is, and you just meet people and listen. But I mean, I was doing events 4 days a week, sometimes, maybe not 5, but usually 4 days a week, especially as we got closer towards the end of the year and the election, more and more. And you just go, go, go. But you have to realize you're always on, no matter where you're at. You're at the grocery store and somebody's like, hey, I want to, how do you feel about this? And you're just kind of like, oh. So it's not nothing. It's a big thing to take on. But again, in the role will be, the same things will happen. You'll meet people wherever. You'll go out for a drink and somebody will sit there and maybe come up to you and ask you point blank on X, Y, and Z. And you have to be able to handle it in, obviously professional manner, but you're going to answer them. You're going to say, hey, let's do it during office hours. But you're always on, you're go, go, go. And you definitely got to know what your platform is, and be aware of what's happening in your community. The worst is when you're kind of like, I'm not sure, but anyhow.
So yeah, it sounds exhausting.
Yeah, that's a snapshot.
Spoiler alert, though, you won the freaking race. Oh my gosh. So I'm sure the listeners would also love to hear, like, what does that mean? What does being the county commissioner in Chaffee County do? Like, is this a full-time thing? Does it have implications for your bandwidth for Trail Sisters, things like that?
Yeah, totally. So technically I view it as what I would say, like, yes, it should, in my opinion, it should be a full-time job. In the past, and it depends how big your counties are. I think it's different everywhere. Just came from a conference where they talked a lot about every county is different and how things are broken up and how you absorb things and how you run your county. But I believe it's very close to a full-time job. At least that's my approach. So I think to give people what they need in terms of leadership and making sure you're guiding the county in the right way, creating a good well-being for everybody, it should be up on your radar as at the top list. So what a county commissioner does, in short, you run the business of the county. So you're in charge of the budgets, you're in charge of various departments, like your Department of Human Services and your Department of Health. And then you're also doing all kinds of policy making. And outside of that, you work a lot with your elected officials at the state level and the national level to make sure whatever they're kind of putting together really reflects what you need on the local level. And at the same time, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but just curious. So does that mean that you, as the commissioner from Chaffee County, will be interacting with people at a state level in Colorado to advocate for your county?
Correct. So I'll work with our state house and state senate representatives, essentially. So when they create Colorado-based policies, I want to make sure whatever gets passed speaks to what a rural community needs, depending on what the policy would be. Like, hey, is this helpful for us? If not, I want to encourage my local representative to vote against it if it doesn't take care of what we need. So,
Got
but
it.
then
Yep.
we deal a lot with also our national level Congress folks as well. So what they're doing federally, which is great. You get to county commissioners it's actually one of the coolest jobs that's what's been told to me, instead of state house and state senate, because we get to deal with your neighbor. So you get to work with people on the ground level, but then you also have the ability to jump all the way up to the federal level with, your congressman or your senator and
Cool.
speak to them too. So you really have a chance you hit everything. Whereas some of the other roles, state senator might not talk to the people on the ground. They might just talk to the county commissioner and then federally, or the state, or the governor, but they don't really get the full scale. And in this role, you get everything. So it's unique in that aspect. So now I forget.
It must be a fascinating education in civics, right? Like what people used to learn in school, just like how democracy works from the most basic local level all the way to the macro national level. It must be really fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you planning to give a big tax break to local trail runners?
Right. Yeah. If only I could. Yeah. Right. Everybody would be running trails and be like, we're in.
Yeah. Oh. Big tax breaks for trail running businesses and trail runners themselves. That's my platform.
There we go. There we go.
Cool. Well, congratulations, Gina. It's really fun to learn a little bit more about it. I think you said in the film it's a 4-year term.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else you want to say just about like kind of your goals for the term, taking office here in a couple of weeks. And yeah. Oh, I mean, does it have implications for how much time you're going to be able to spend on Trail Sisters anymore?
That's right. Sorry. I knew there was something else I was missing. So I'll 100% still be doing Trail Sisters, but we're looking to probably hire part-time contractors, maybe 1 or 2 that will be able to help with some of the day-to-day stuff that I won't be able to get to. But in terms of partnerships and still checking in with our leaders and things like that, I'll still be going to the retreats and doing the races. So high-level stuff I can still manage, but there's some stuff that just daily work that it'd be nice to have somebody else help. And we're at a point where we kind of want to grow a bit too. So it's kind of a good time frame to be like, hey, let's I don't know, grow the business a little bit more. And I'm able to jump into some other things that I'm passionate about, but I don't think I could ever leave Trail Sisters, not, go, not gone forever. I couldn't do that. I don't know how you feel with Free Trail, that sense. It's your baby, so you're like, oh, I don't know if I could ever, not be there and not be a part of it in some way.
Yeah, it's hard to delegate, isn't it? And it's a skill probably both of us need to learn. You mentioned your events. It makes me just maybe before we get to our closing question here, you're a race director of Lake Sonoma, and aren't you on the board of Hard Rock?
I was. I actually I stepped off. Was it I think a year and a half ago or so?
Okay.
I was going to be. I knew running for county commissioner, and I'm vice president for search and rescue out here, and then I still trust. It was just too many things, and I was able to help with the lottery policy to help get more women into the race. And I was like, all right, this is great, and this might be time for me to, move along and focus on some other things. It's hard to do it all, but I do miss it a little bit, to be honest. I was like, I wish, but I only have so many hours of the day.
Yeah, you can only do so much, but anyway, figured, we could give a quick shout out to Lake Sonoma and Hard Rock here on the show. We're as we're recording this, it's the day before the Hard Rock lottery.
Right. So I knew you're going to be busy.
Yeah. Well, I actually chose to not put my name in the hat this year. My gut said, hey, dude, you've had your runs there. You'll go back in the future. But right now, getting pulled would be sort of probably a counterproductive thing in my life, because it would create existential dread, and I already suffered on that course a lot. So anyway,
Gina,
it's great it's great to chat with you. And just congratulations on everything you've been able to do. And I just really do admire this spirit of service that you have. And it may make you embarrassed for me to say that, but
Oh.
I think, you shouldn't underestimate the difference that you've made in trail running proper in your local community. And hopefully this podcast is a good way to inspire other people to have a similar impact. We close all these episodes with the same traditional question. That is, who is one person that you admire? This person could be inside or outside of sport, living or dead. Why do you admire that person?
So the mayor of our town, Mayor BV, Libby Fay, has been super, she's been a great mentor, and it's really kind of been encouraging for me to take the next steps if that's, was my direction. I think, I think for her, she's gone through an amazing life. She's a little bit older, and she's now the mayor of the town. And I remember her saying to me when she won the election to be mayor, she said, all my parents would be, if only they could see me doing this. And because growing up she's, like I said, a bit older, I think mid 60s, late 60s. And I think when she was younger, it was never a thing, it wasn't going to be possible. Who would have thought? And it was really neat just to, I don't know, I was inspired by the things she's done, and just hearing her say like, oh, and I don't know, part of me is like, well, I hope I make my folks proud, and I hope I can inspire other people. But she's been kind of just providing me with little nuggets of information, and she's been a trustee for 8 years now. She's the mayor, and just kind of learning some of the things that she's gone through. And I don't know, she's been helping me along the way quite a bit. And so I guess that would be a great person to, say that, I definitely admire her. And,
What was her name again?
Libby Fay is her name. Yeah.
Mayor Fay.
Mayor Fay.
Buena Vista, Colorado.
Yeah. But
great way to end the show. Yeah. Well, Commissioner-elect Lucrezi, it's an honor to have your time here. Good luck as you begin this next chapter of your professional career, your political career. Congratulations on everything you've done for Trail Sisters, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and thank you for everything you're doing. It takes all of us, right? So thank you.
Takes a village. Yeah.